San Antonio, Texas. I was I can't find my words. I was enlisted then as a flying cadet to start training. We went through calisthenics and actually didn't start flying. Oh, jeez.
It's okay.
We didn't start flying till about 1940.
Okay, so you went in. You were trained, and the war was breaking out in Europe, and then Pearl Harbor was bombed, and then, I mean, everything was going, and then where was your first assignment overseas? Where did you go?
I was flying A-36s at Harding Air Force Base in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And after I graduated, left there, I went overseas. I flew to Miami, Florida, Puerto Rico, French Guiana, and across the Atlantic, landed in Casablanca. From Casablanca, myself and my buddy Russo, we hitchhiked from Casablanca to
Okay, here's what I kind of want to start leading into, and then unfold the story. But you were over in Europe for the World War II, and in the group that you were in, did you start with the A-36? Is that what you always flew? I mean,
yes.
Okay.
We,
Tell me just a little bit about the A-36 aircraft.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about that.
we got the A-36 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we flew day and night there. Went to the gunnery range, practiced dropping bombs, also firing our 6 50 caliber machine guns at targets. And from there, after staying there for about a month, we logged about 130 hours in the A-36. So we were trained very well in the airplane. We could do almost anything we wanted to do with the plane. And myself and Mr. Russo, he was in a different squadron. We were picked to get our stuff together and start overseas. We flew to Miami Beach. From Miami Beach, we flew to South America. From there to Africa. From Africa to a staging center. And then we got our orders to move to the front, and we had no transportation. We hitchhiked through Algiers to Cape Bon in Africa.
Okay, Chuck, tell me, when you went into combat, you told me some stories earlier, but you mentioned you shot anything that moved, basically. I mean, can you tell me from your perspective as a pilot? I mean, what are you doing in that plane? Are you in formation? Are you going in? You mentioned strafing runs. You did all these things. You have your fingers on a machine gun and your bombs. Tell me about some of the combat missions that you flew.
Okay, from Cape Bon, we started into Sicily, the invasion of Sicily. We started in there. We would go out in groups of 4, 6, or 12 planes in formation to hit any targets we could. Usually they were on the ground, And the Germans were moving up through Sicily, going up through Palermo. And we would follow them. They had no cover, just bare mountainous country. And we would go out. There'd be about 3 or 4 sorties a day. Different people would be on it, A-36s, and they would strafe anything they could until they got into Sicily. And then we started moving east, northern Sicily.
Tell me about some of the targets that you were ordered to, or was it just anything? I mean, what were your targets?
There were targets weren't assigned to us. We just took them as we came up upon them.
The first time that you did that, what do you remember? I mean, was it difficult for you, or was it just
Well,
you were trained to do it, you did it, and you just went your way? I mean,
across Sicily, the northern coast, we'd go up to Palermo and then we'd start going east along the coast. And that's where I first run into Ack. And that's when the Germans were shooting at us. And it's an odd feeling. You're flying, and they're usually just back of you when the shots were going off, and I'd move the plane and just make the plane hop, unless it hit you. If it hit you, of course, that was it. So we carried missions every day. You might have 1, might have 2 missions, and it was all the same thing, shooting up anything on the ground that we could find.
Could you visibly see if you hit your targets, or I mean, as you would go in and come back? I mean,
Sometime we would repeat ourselves, turn around and come back and shoot it over. But most of the time we'd just hit them and going on and catch something in front of us.
tell me about the times you encountered the Luftwaffe, or did you encounter enemy
I never
fighters?
encountered any German planes. Of course, some of the other pilots did. But I wasn't on the missions that they encountered them. We had one pilot that ended up in the 27th Fighter Bomb Group. He became an ace. And he is the only one that ever got that far. There's other pilots got 2, 3 or 4, but he's the only one that became an ace.
Did you shoot down any German aircraft?
I never had the opportunity to shoot at any German aircraft. I never met any. It was just on the missions that I was on. It was just none of them attacked us, or we never run into any.
Did you have a flight leader in the squadron?
There was always a flight leader, and each flight leader had a wingman. And usually he would lead us, and would usually be in packs of 4 or 6 or 12. And then you were on your own. You flew formation all the time, unless you had a break for any reason.
Were there German soldiers that you were shooting at, or were they just vehicles? Or?
When we were going up through Sicily, German soldiers were moving up to Palermo, and we would go and we would catch them on a mountainside, and we would just strafe their armor, motorcycles, vehicles of any kind. Was a Hermann Göring division that was moving up, and we shot them up for about 2 or 3 days. And then, of course, they got up there, and then they started moving out, and then we lost them someplace because they weren't there anymore. And the group moved up to northern Sicily and started into Italy. From there, we would go into the invasion of Salerno, and we were low cover there from from the Italian coast
You were in
to
the
the
invasion?
island of Capri. We would go back and forth at low altitude. We would be at 5,000 feet. There were other planes ahead of us at 10,000 and at 15,000 and probably at 20,000. We covered the whole landing of Palermo. We could watch the Navy boats shooting off their cannon. We could watch the projectile going and hit the ground into Italy.
So you were in the invasion of Salerno?
Yeah,
Okay, providing cover for the ground troops? Is that
Yes.
what you're doing?
and we did that until they landed and it was over. And then after that was over, then we moved from Salerno, from where we were into Italy. And we covered the ground forces up through Italy. Of course, I got shot down in the middle of Italy.
I want to get to that in a minute, but not yet. Okay.
Okay.
Now, when you're in a plane, you're the only one in the plane.
Yeah.
Are you getting orders to shoot? I mean, what's going on with the radio communications?
There's usually no talking over the intercom in the planes. Everything is silent. Everybody goes. We're in formation. We hit it like in the Salerno in a harbor. We'd get the boats. We would all follow down through. We would start usually on a boat or any good target that's stationary. We would climb to about 9,000 to 12,000 feet and go right over the target, flip over and go straight down 90 degrees at the target and release our bombs and strafing at about 3 or 4,000 feet and pull out and maybe go back around and do the same thing and strafe and shoot it up. I would usually make 2 or 3 passes, which we shouldn't have done because that's when you run into danger, and then we would fly back. We were usually in the air about an hour.
Did you have your finger or your thumbs on the machine gun? How does that work?
Your machine guns, you had 6 50 caliber machine guns, 3 in each wing, and your trigger was in your hand on the joystick on a plane that you had. It was right there. You just pull the trigger just like you would on any other gun.
So you're firing all 6 at once?
And you're firing all 6 at once. And if your guns, if they should jam, then you can't fire anything.
How do you aim the machine guns? I mean, you don't have a
No, you aim.
bullseye, do you?
You aim through your. You have sights
Okay.
in front of you. They're right at eye level above the cockpit. And they just throw an image out. And you just take that and you follow that.
Were there tracer bullets then?
That you usually in our guns we had one regular, one incendiary, and one armor piercing. So when you would pull that trigger, you could see the bullets go as you're going. And firing and shooting at something, you're moving, and usually the target is moving. So it's not just a simple thing to aim and shoot. You have to follow maybe by 2 or 3 lengths of whatever you're shooting at the direction they're going, and you're going with them. Pulling the bombs are all 2 bombs. They were 500 apiece, 1 on each wing, and to set them off, you pulled what the hell? You had a trigger down other than for the guns, and you armed them, and then you pulled another trigger and dropped the bombs.
Both at the same time?
Yeah. Sometime they would go off. Well, I would say most of the time they went off. But every once in a while, they would stick. And then when you're coming home, you'd have to wiggle your plane around and try to drop it wherever it fell.
And who determined, again, the targets for the bombs? You did, or was there?
The targets were always given to us before we took off. And we worked by a grid. It's just like a checkerboard. And in the ground, they would have the same thing. And they would tell us 1-5 or 1A, whichever square the enemy was in, they would give that to us. And that's where we would fly and drop our ammunition.
And then you'd go back to the base or whatever,
Then it would-
reload?
After that, would return to the base, and if you had a bomb that was stuck and you couldn't get it loose, you had to take a chance because it was already armed. You had to take a chance and land the plane with the bomb in it. That's the only way, or jump out of the airplane, either one.
And you would go right back up and do the same thing
No,
again?
then
or
you'd
no?
go, you usually had one mission a day, either morning or afternoon. Sometimes you'd have one in the morning and the afternoon. So I got in somewhere around 52 missions.
Did any of your buddies get killed on missions and things happen?
Yes, we've had a lot of times I wasn't on them. Every time they were jumped, I wasn't with them. We lost quite a few pilots. We went through a lot of airplanes that the Germans knocked down, and we knocked down, and a couple of dog fights, we'd get 3, 4, 5 German planes. They would get 1 or 2 of ours.
Now, you never, again, got into dogfighting?
I never-
like that.
I was never, whether it was luck or what, but I never encountered any airplanes, German airplanes.
Are you a religious man? Did you pray? Did you have faith in God to get you through some of the harder times? Or?
Well, as far as religion's concerned, you don't have time to think about it. You just go ahead and do what you're supposed to do, and that's about all your mind is on. Just do what you were supposed to do. Try to get your mission done, and then next day do the same thing. Religion was strictly mass, and we had on Sundays we could go to confession, communion, and you could talk to the priest, whatever you wanted to. You could talk to anybody you wanted to, as far as that's concerned. But religion was mostly in this place, because other than that, when you're in combat and you only have time to do one thing, and that's try to keep from getting killed and try to kill whatever you can so they don't kill you.
Could you visibly see shooting soldiers on the ground? Did it ever get that close, or you could see?
When we were strafing going up toward Palermo through Sicily, the ground is it's barren. There's no trees or anything. And when we would hit the German columns, they would jump out of their cars. They would jump off their motorcycles down over the hill. They'd get killed going down a damn mountain. But everything try to get away from you, because you have 6 50 caliber machine guns, and if you understand what that can do, you can understand why they would run. And you were shooting at them. You weren't thinking of anything else except when they would go and bunch up and they'd start shooting at you.
With their anti-aircraft? I mean,
Anti-aircraft, rifles, any damn thing they had, they threw up at you. Because when you strafed down at them on the ground, you're going down to about 15, 20 feet on your pull out. You don't have much, you're almost right at the person shooting at you.
Is it like what you see in the movies though? You see the aircraft come in and everybody scatters and then.
That's right. And when you're firing the 6 machine guns, it actually slows you way down, and it's just chatter, and you just feel like you're going backwards as you're firing. You carry 250 rounds in each machine gun. So the weight was terrific. 50 caliber machine gun bullet is really a terrific instrument. When it hits something, it goes.
Did you fly any night missions like that, or were they all during the day?
No. The only time you'd fly a night mission, come in late, is if you were in the afternoon sortie and you got caught. You were late, you come in at dusk, and that's about the only time you flew at night there in combat. We did. We didn't have the facilities for flying night flight. You could go if you could take off in the dark, but you'd have to land at night because they didn't have the facilities.
So how many combat missions did you fly before you were shot down? Is it 51 or?
51, 52, I don't know, I can count them in my log somewhere in there. Somewhere between 45 and 55.
Did you ever have any nightmares after the war about what you had done with the combat runs or anything like that, or did that ever bother you?
Well, actually, when I got back from overseas, I was just glad to get back. Nothing much bothered me. I couldn't talk about it, but nothing actually bothered me. I could go to work and not think about things. But later in my older years, I remember writing my log that I was writing in prison camp. I was reading it, nobody was home, I was by myself, and I just started crying. I just cried and cried. I didn't even know what the hell it was all about. And then when I got back to the VA, it still bothered me, but they kind of straightened me out. So now it's it doesn't bother me, but when I start bringing it up and everything, then it gets a little rough.
Can you tell me about what happened in Italy when you were shot down? Just give me a little history of before you were shot down, what happened.
Okay.
You told me a little bit, but tell me the story again about your being shot down.
When I got shot down, we went on a mission, beautiful Sunday morning. There was 12 of us in formation. We went, no particular target, we just went to get anything we could hit. I was tail end Charlie, I was the 12th one on the end. And as we were strafing trucks and stuff, we would go down to, I would say, around 50 feet of the ground, and we had to watch if there was any obstructions. As you're flying, you're taking it all in and everything else. And if it's a target, you keep your eye on the target and go. Well, that morning we took off, and I was number 12. We shot up a couple trucks that we saw, and we were in a tight turn. And as we was in there, all at once, I just felt the poof, and the whole plane shook. And I don't know where they hit me, and then I saw smoke. So I just did what I was trained to do. I disconnected my wires that I was communication wires. I opened the cockpit, and I just flew out the side the way I was supposed to. I trimmed the plane so I would clear either the tail or the wing, whatever. And I just floated right out on my back. And I was floating out, and I hit this parachute. I pulled the rod. And the parachute, I just felt it as I was still vertical. I felt the parachute open, and it slowed me down, and I started down to the ground. I just went down steady, and as I hit the ground, I was right at the end of my journey. I was right in the ground. I dropped my chute, started running. I saw a bunch of brush down in a ravine, and I went and jumped under there and started covering myself up with grass and stuff, and I laid there while they were all searching for me on the ground. German troops, they were just about ready to go out, to go back, when a guy spotted my legs sticking out of the grass. And he said, "Hands up." And that was it. I was a prisoner.
What happened at that moment? I mean, did they knock you to the ground? Did they say, "Follow me"? I mean,
No.
Were they gunpoint?
No, the guy just held. When I got up, he was holding a gun on me. It was a Luger. And two other guys came with me, one in the back, one on each side, and they took me over to their headquarters. And the first thing, the lieutenant was in charge of it, or captain, whatever he was, he asked me if I was hungry. I said, "Yeah, I am hungry." So he gave me a great big bowl of rice. It just came to me. And it was all filled with raisins. And I looked at that and I thought they were bugs. But boy, when I looked closer, I ate that raisin. That's about the first time I ate in about 2 days. And I weighed around 150, 55 pounds when I got shot down. And when I got to the Stalag Luft 3, permanent camp, I weighed 135 pounds. And then stayed there for 18 months.
Well, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, they asked you if you were hungry. Did they interrogate you? Did they?
They were just soldiers that knocked me down,
Okay.
shot me down. They were curious what I looked like. I couldn't talk to them. I could talk to the lieutenant because he was educated in England. So we talked, as long as he held me, we had conversations. And it was just an old truck that we were in. It burned sawdust and stunk and smoked like the dickens, but it sure got them places. And that's what the Germans, a lot of them had, that was an aircraft outfit that followed the German ground troops as they retreated up through Italy.
Now tell me about the boxcar, the trains you were on. Is this what transported you to the
Okay.
Stalag?
Yes.
Tell me that story again.
We stopped at the one railroad station, and that was, I think it was MPs, German MPs that took us over. There were quite a few of us prisoners, and there was a British major with us, and he was in charge. There's always the commanding or the highest ranking officer would be in charge. So he got in an argument when we got into Rome. He got in an argument with him because he wouldn't let the guys the infantrymen that they had captured, there were probably 1,000 of them in boxcars, and he wanted them for the guys to go out so they could relieve themselves. And he wouldn't do it. The German officer wouldn't do it. And the British officer, major, he got so damn mad, he was going to beat up on a guy, and a guy pulled out his gun, so he couldn't do anything, otherwise he'd have been shot. So we all stayed in the boxcars in Rome. Relieve yourself in a boxcar. And then when we started out, they gave us a 2-pound bully beef, ham, not ham, beef, and a 3-pound, 2 or 3 pound can. And that was for 27 of us in a boxcar in that one place. That's what we had in there for 2 days. And then we got transferred again. And as they picked up through France and that other pilots, prisoners that they captured, it was the same way. I was in Frankfurt when the Americans on September, was it September? They had the first air raid in there, and Frankfurt was just a staging place for prisoners. And when they came in at night, that's the first time that I ever realized what it's like to be in an air raid. They hit Frankfurt that night. And now that I think about it, I think I was just like my little dog here when they were shooting fireworks on 4th of July. He would go and run under the bed, but we had nothing to hide into. We just stayed right there, bombs going off all over.
These were American bombs, right?
American bombs, yes. I was in Frankfurt, and there was one other town that, when we got out of the train, a guard was on me in the train station, and the airplanes and the B-17s came in, and all the Germans, they went and in their, damn it, the Germans went undercover, and the prisoners, there was about 12, 14 of us. We were right in the air, we were right in there, and the Germans were in there, and we were right in the open. We couldn't move or they'd shoot us, so we stayed right there. So that's one other air raid that I was in.
Now, you were a prisoner of war for 18 months?
I was a prisoner for 18 months.
How were you treated? I mean, did they treat you bad, good? I mean, how were you
Well,
treated?
in the prison camp, when I got to, after I got out of solitary, when we first got, I was in solitary confinement in a room about 4 by 8 with a cot in it. No covers, no nothing, just a not sawdust, but Excelsior in a make for a mattress. And in the morning I would get borscht, if you know what it is, but it wasn't borscht like my mother made. It was just beet peelings put through water and heated, and that was it. And then in the evening, I would get a sandwich. It wasn't just a slice of bread. and I learned to finally like it, this dark rye bread or whatever it was. I stayed in there for about every day. I'd be interrogated, wanted to know all the information, and of course I knew nothing. That was truthfully, I didn't know anything because all I knew was orders that was given to us.
Why were you in solitary confinement? Because,
I was shot down and a prisoner.
but they did that to everybody?
Yeah, they took all prisoners and interrogated them.
Okay. For about a month, you said?
No, I was in there for 10 days.
Okay, 10 days.
And the interrogator had always asked me if I wanted a cigarette before we started, and I says, yeah, I'd smoke it. And I'd give him my rank and serial number, and I wouldn't give it to him. Or rather, I did give it to him. And then he'd take his cigarettes and put them in his pocket because I didn't give him any more information. And the interrogator spoke perfect English, and he would ask you all kind of questions. But I didn't know anything. In fact, the interrogator was telling me on the B-17 pilots that they had, they would name them, and in fact they named to me Colonel Stevenson, which was my commanding officer at the 27th Fighter Bomb Group. He got shot down before I did.
So after 10 days, they figured out?
After 10 days, they took me out and put me in with a group of other prisoners.
And how were you treated after that point? Were you given 3 meals a day?
Well, that was the first place that they paid me. They paid me the same rate that they pay the German second lieutenant. In fact, I still have the money in my logbook there.
What, they paid you?
Yeah, they're supposed to, by the Geneva Convention,
Okay.
they're supposed to pay you the same place,
So you were
the same amount.
You were treated pretty well then, you think, or?
No, it's about like a private over here,
Okay.
$30, $40. I don't know, the German money is there, I don't know what it is.
But what I mean, as far as being a human being, they didn't torture you? I mean, they fed you, you slept?
I would say they treated me, and the rest of it, when we got to Stalag Luft 3, a permanent camp, excuse me, we got boxes of food. We would get one box, and it had food in it that was packed by the YMCA, here in the States and shipped through Switzerland, and they would give us, all the prisoners, they would give them one box for a week. That went on until coming close to the end of the war. It started going to one box for 2 guys a week, and then it started going till it was, I don't even remember, probably 1 box to five guys, 5 prisoners. The food, it got bad, and by the time the Russians started coming in, when they were about 40 miles from us, it was on a January morning, night, about 2 or 3 degrees. They marched us all outside and started us on a march. The whole camp, that was our camp, French camps, and everything. I would say roughly 5,000 prisoners started out walking. We walked one day, no place to sleep. I slept one night in a brick plant. That was the only warm night I had. And the other nights we slept in barns. And you think you could run away or something, but you just couldn't because they had German guards around you all over the damn place.
Did anybody try to escape?
No, well, I don't know if some did. I imagine some of them did. The bunch that I was with, we didn't do it. They marched us through Germany, through all the labor camps and stuff like that. One camp was all barracks in there, 2 stories high, had all Polish, Scandinavian women in there doing the work. I don't know what they did, but they were in there laborers. And then we marched till we came to, we've gone towards Munich. What's the name of that camp? We stopped at a camp about 40 miles from Munich. What the hell's the name of it? And they had Polish prisoners in there, young kids, 12, 13, 14 years old, that were captured fighting the Germans in the Warsaw sewers. And I got to talk to some of them. I was fortunate because I could speak and understand Polish, which my mother made me do when I was in grade school and high school. And I was very thankful for her for making me be able to read and write in Polish, because it helped me a lot in trading with them. And I was so surprised with those just young kids fighting in sewers in Warsaw. And then after we were there, Patton's 14th Armored came through our camp and just flew through like like a Jeep going 50 miles an hour, shooting and going right through. They went right through past us, and he liberated us.
Well, tell me about how that happened. I mean, did it happen all of a sudden, like you said, and you were free, or did they come in and what happened to the Germans that were around you? I mean,
the Germans that were around us ran away when Patton started coming in, because the artillery started shooting. We knew it was coming. We dove for the, they had a bunch of ditches all through the camp where they threw their cans and stuff. And we just dove into that as he went through.
how did you know it was coming? You said we knew it was coming.
Well, we knew it was coming because we had radios. You see, our prison camp, especially in Stalag Luft 3, you could get almost anything. If you had a chance to escape, is all you had to do is go see the commanding officer. They would give you all the passes, everything else, food and everything, uniforms, whatever, to help you get through. But none of them did get through. They were all came back and went 30 days in solitary confinement.
Well, Chuck, tell me what it was like. I mean, 18 months as a prisoner, and then all of a sudden, did it dawn on you that we're no longer prisoners? How did you feel at that time?
Well, at Stalag Luft 3, when they took us out of there, it was in the middle of the night. You could just take whatever food you could. That was altogether different from a permanent camp. In a permanent camp, you had some food. The only thing they ever gave us is kohlrabi, if you know what a kohlrabi is. It's like a beet, only it's round.
Well, tell me again, though, when Patton's army came through and you dove into those ditches, I mean, when did it dawn on you that you weren't a prisoner anymore?
Oh, I knew, because the Russian prisoners were going through crazy. They were going crazy through the whole camp. Outside the camp, there was not a trench, but a mound. It was about 10 feet high, and I would say it was about 5 feet wide, maybe wider. And what they did, Germans, they took their potatoes, that they harvested and put them in there and covered them with dirt to last the winter. So the Russians were going through there, and we knew because the tanks went right through. We saw the tanks. They went right through the camp. I wish I knew. There was about 30-some thousand prisoners there. There was all types, everything in that camp.
But how did you feel when you were liberated? Did you have a party? Did you
No,
cry?
well,
What happened? I mean,
Myself and another fellow, Lon Carrick. That came right to my head. Lon Carrick, he was from Massachusetts, Connecticut. We were going together, and we said we're going to go get a Jeep. And we went in there, and we went to the town. I have to laugh. The people, they were just frightened. You know, you could just see how frightened they are with two American soldiers going through their house and asking if they have a car. And they couldn't understand English because they were just people like anybody else. So we looked around. They didn't have hardly anything to eat, so we didn't even get anything to eat there. And we just went there, and finally we just gave up and went back to the camp where we were. And we stayed there, about 3 days, I guess, eating potatoes out of those places. And then they sent in from Reims, France, I believe it was, DC-3s. They sent them in there, and we got 27 guys in each one of them and flew us back to Camp Lucky Strike in Le Havre in France.
wasn't that a great moment?
Yeah, we got there and it was awful monotonous. We just sat there for days and we wanted to get home, and we sat there and finally we got on a boat which was carrying soldiers from Bradley's army on that same boat and started across the Atlantic.
What month was that? Do you remember what month that was?
That was in April, May.
May of
It
45?
was May 45.
Was the war with Europe over yet, or was it?
It was over.
Also, it was already over. Wow.
Because I got home, I left the United States June the 2nd, I believe, and I got back in June the 2nd, 2 years later.
When you crossed the Atlantic going back home, I bet you were just reflecting on maybe everything that had happened the last 18
Well,
months.
When I went over, I flew over. And when I went back, came back on a Italian liner. I forget the name of it. And it was converted for troop carrying. And I was on there, and I was officer of that contingent there on that boat. And the first night when we were sleeping, we were just sleeping on the floor. And we were on a third deck, I believe. And that boat had a creak in it, or just would go over the waves. For 3 nights, that's the way it was. And boy, the fourth night, it was really, music was going crazy. And I thought, what the hell's the matter? And I was, hardly could stand up. And then when daylight came, I went up on a deck, and I saw these waves way the hell up over my head. And I thought, man, I don't want no more boats. I didn't want to die drowning. That's why I went to be a pilot. If I went down and got killed, I'd be killed. I didn't want to drown, and yet I could have over the Mediterranean because we flew just over the waves. But I got to it was at Fort Dix. I got to Fort Dix in
New Jersey?
New Jersey, got on a train, got to Warren, Ohio. I went in a barber shop and got a haircut. And I couldn't get a bus, I couldn't get anything, so I had to walk over where my wife was living. And I got over to the house, and I knocked at the door. It was early in the morning. I knocked at the door, and here's this broad. She comes out in her petticoat. I looked at her. That was a real thrill to me, something like that, to go face to face after seeing her in 2 years. That was a very, very special moment.
Well, Chuck, looking back on your life in World War II and being an American citizen, what does freedom mean to you?
Freedom is the most precious thing that you can have. Even more precious than your wife. If you have freedom, if you have brothers or sisters or anybody like that here, you can be with them, you can do as you want, everything else. Nobody's telling you what to do except your family. And freedom, there's just nothing in this world that's like that. If you have it taken away from you, if you're in the jail, which people commit crimes and they go to jail, they might get maybe 1 year. And people think, oh, hell, that's nothing. But 1 year in jail is worse than I had it in Germany, I think. And I feel sorry for people that go to jail, and yet you can't be too sorry because they committed a crime. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there.
Tell me about the price for freedom. If you were talking to a young person today, what would you tell them about the price to protect our freedoms?
Well, to protect freedom, you can give your life. You can donate it so other people have it. And over here now, some of the things I see, freedom's taken from us just a little bit at a time. I just can't understand it. I can't. You should be free, and yet you're not totally free. In a way, the way the country's going, I have doubts. I hope others stand up for it so other people can have their freedom. But even in Germany, even in a prison camp, the little bit of freedom you have, you give anything for it.
Do you think our society as a whole is forgetting about World War II?
Well, it's not forgetting about World War II. They're not taught it. When I went to school, we studied geography, history, and mathematics, and other things. Now, you ask the kid where Las Vegas is, and they'll tell you. But you ask them where Boulder City is, they don't know. They don't know. I don't blame the kids because they're not taught. And I just feel so sorry for them. It's just a simple little education, but they try to, I just think of all the things that they try to teach these kids, and none of.
Do you consider yourself a hero?
No. I just consider myself a citizen of Polish descent. Our dad, there was seven in our family, 4 girls and 3 boys. We were all educated. Our father died when I was 5. My youngest brother was only a month old. And my brother Johnny, he was 1 or 2 years old, I don't remember. We grew up. My mother, she was a Polish immigrant. She made us all study. But I'll say this. I never took a book home from school, from grade school to high school. I never took a book home. I had time to study in school, which I did. And I had to study, and I think my brother did too. I had to study in English, and I had to study Polish, reading and writing, which I was thankful for that my mother made me do it. She had a hard time, but she accomplished it a lot. And she raised all 7 of us. My one sister just died, and 6 of us left. Most of us are in our 80s or 90s.
One more question, Chuck. Why did you come back from World War II? A lot of men didn't come back. Why do you think you came back? You survived.
I survived as thousands of us did as prisoners, got shot down. I was fortunate that I wasn't hurt or burnt whenever I got shot down. I didn't break any legs, which normally I think I should have broken 4 of them. But that's about it.
I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. I ask all my veterans at the end of the interview to do this. I'm going to position my camera. I'm going to ask you to do a salute into the camera. Will you do that for me?
Sure.
Okay, just give me a second here. Okay, right into the camera. Give me a salute and hold it. Okay, sir. I'm going to shut this off.